Hello, YouTube. So this was a video that I wasn't sure if I was actually going to end up making it or not, but I figured, wrestling card channel or wrestling channel in general. It's been mostly cards recently, but I figured I would actually do a wrestling related video. I've got some old ones here on the channel from months and years past, but I thought it would be appropriate since we're on the cusp of WrestleMania 40. It is an anniversary of WrestleMania, so certainly it'll be a big deal. So let me get a couple of caveats out of the way, but before I say anything else, let me just say this. Regardless of what else I'm going to say in this video, because I'm definitely going to have a lot of fun from my perspective. I'm kind of complaining and snarking on a couple of these different things, but I've got my reasons. But let me just say that obviously, being an anniversary WrestleMania, it is going to be a great show. If WWE knows how to do anything else, they know how to do spectacle and they know how to try to make it as big a show as possible. I'm not the biggest WWE fan. I've talked about that in the past. A lot of it comes from being, a viewer of the WWE going back all the way to the end of the Hogan era, through the new generation era, through the attitude era, the ruthless aggression era, and whatever they call the immediate aftermath of that. There was a little lull there in between, but I remember the summer of punk and all those elements of it. I've watched the majority of it. I've got a chance to attend shows in multiple decades for as far as WWE is concerned, and they know how to put on a show. But I've soured on the product over the past several years, and I've enjoyed over the last several years a lot of what AEW was doing previously. So it is my preferred brand as far as that's concerned. But let's get this right. And, the elephant in the room, AEW has done a lot of things. Tony Khan in particular has done a lot of things to douse flames and gasoline and more flames on top of his own product. But what's funny is even though he's made a whole hash of it, it's been one disastrously poor decision after another, they're still able to make some good shows. There's still some great matches that come out of it. So even in a situation where you're doing very poorly, making very poor business decisions and doing that poorly, like I could spend a whole video talking about that. So I'm just touching on it right now off the top. They can still put on some good shows. And honestly, a lot of the pay-per-views, I still enjoy them very much. So it's one of those things where I can still find some good, even when I see some things where it's like a little questionable. Now, what's interesting is that this pay-per-view here, on paper, and I know for a lot of people, they're very excited about this pay-per-view. I've sensed that vibe. I've gotten it from it. A lot of people are very excited about it. I'm not excited about it at all, but really what it comes down to is I'm just looking at what's here. And I'm also looking at it in the context of what's being provided here for me. And I'm going to look at it through the lens of what the presentation is that WWE themselves have given to it. And because a lot of people talk about when they compare the two companies, and honestly, you'd probably be better served not comparing the two companies. They're very much operating on two different models. So it's kind of apples to oranges, really, if you want to do the comparison of the two. But the point is, WWE, when we talk about WWE, we talk about them as the storyline company. They're the ones that do the storylines, which is true. They do a lot more storylines than AEW does by comparison in the same type of format. But what's interesting and kind of what I'm going to talk about going into this, and I'm also going to make predictions on all these different matches here, and I'm going to go through the order. I've zoomed in on it a little bit, so it doesn't show all of them, but I'll scroll up and down as I go through this. And from what I understand, this is the match order, I think. So if it's not the match order, I apologize. But at the same time, I'm going to go through all the matches anyway. But what I'm going to say, as far as night one and night two, is that while each one of these has storyline elements in it, when I go through them, part of my problem isn't that they don't have storylines going into it. It's that most of the storylines are kind of like half finished, half baked. They're kind of lazy. So it's one of those things where I guess this is a philosophical question for you. Do you prefer to have no storylines and just kind of a match that happens? Or do you prefer to have storylines, but they're so half baked and half assed that you may as well have no storylines. And in some ways I'd prefer you didn't, because in some ways it gives me a bit of a headache listening to how the stupid rationalization that a couple of these matches have. And that's kind of my issue right now with a lot of the stuff that's going on here, because a lot of it feels like it's effectively, it feels like filler, and it's going to come off like filler. But I guess in the course of it, and to be fair, there's going to be some good matches in here. Like a lot of cases, when we're talking about putting on a pay-per-view, putting on a show, there's going to be some good matches, and I'm going to call that out when I see it, because it's the fair take. Because there is some good in here, but it's one of those things where it's surrounded by a lot of why even bother. So let me start off from the top. So basically, from what I understand, this graphic here that was made, I think is supposed to represent the order of the matches. I think, from what I understand, I pulled this off of Reddit, and I'll include a link to that in the description, and you can find a lot of these different ones yourselves. But I'm going to start at the top left, and that is Rhea Ripley taking on Becky Lynch. And this right here is the poster child, the perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about. This match should be quite good. I have no doubt, no question, especially given that if you go back to last year's WrestleMania, Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte was a very good match. It was very solid, and Rhea Ripley did a good job in it, and Charlotte did a good job in it, and they put together a good match. And Becky Lynch, I think, is capable of putting on a match of equivalent quality or better, especially with Rhea, especially another year removed from that, because Rhea Ripley has only gotten better. She's been able to put on some great matches. She did that match in Australia where she was featured with Nia Jax, and that was a very good match. Probably one of Nia Jax's best of her career. So right now, Rhea Ripley is in a great place as far as her character, as far as her in-ring. Everything that she's doing is really great. It's top tier. And Becky Lynch is more than capable of rising to the occasion and putting on a great match. And the thing she did with Trish Stratus, that one cage match, I thought was really well done. So it's one of those things where my expectation is that the match will be good. That's the key thing here. But this match is pointless. And this kind of plays into what I talk about. It's like, yes, it's names, but let me ask a question. And I'm being serious. I want to ask you a question. My prediction is that Rhea Ripley retains. But let's say she doesn't. Let's say, what is your justification and your argument for Becky Lynch winning this match? Where do we go from here if she wins the match? You've spent this time building up Rhea as this dominant champion. She's done extremely well. Is this the occasion where you have her drop the title to Becky Lynch? Or is it a situation where you have her have another notch on her belt of another one of the horsewomen that she defeats at a WrestleMania? Which one do you think leads you down the path of more potential things you could do coming off of that? Because to me, I'm just looking at it from my perspective, I think Rhea Ripley winning does that, gives her another notch in the belt, sets her up so that when you have somebody knock her off, it means even more. And I could see, and I'll talk about it more when we get to the match related to it, I could see potentially a heel Bianca Belair being a much more interesting opponent for Rhea Ripley if she's going to drop the championship. Or you could build up a Tiffany Stratton. Like, the point is, you've got some options if you want to go that route. But Rhea Ripley winning here is key to that. Becky Lynch winning does nothing. It literally doesn't advance the ball forward. Another title reign for Becky Lynch at this stage in the game. I'm not saying I'm morally opposed to it, but what good does it do you? So for me, the prediction is Rhea Ripley. I'd expect her to retain. Who knows? It's WWE. You never know what they're going to do. Next one here, unfortunately, is effectively a bathroom break match. And if this follows the sequencing, it's pretty early on. And this is a real shame because if you really look at the participants in this, it's completely unjustifiable. Like, there's no excuse for it. You're looking at a tag team match that's a six-pack ladder match for the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championships, heaven forbid. So the Judgment Day, Damian Priest and Finn Balor. By the way, Damian Priest is still Send Your Money in the Bank, in case anybody forgot. Versus Awesome Truth, Miz and R-Truth, again, the retread of that, versus DIY, versus the New Day, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods trying to become 457-time tag team champions or whatever it is now, versus the New Catch Republic, which honestly, I don't even remember that name, but mind you, my observing a lot of WWE programming has been a little lax lately, I admit, versus A-Town Down Under, Austin Theory versus Grayson Waller. So there's a couple. So lest I spend too much time just complaining about match by match, let me just keep this really simple. I don't care about this match. The tag team championships at this point really don't mean anything. And on top of everything else, I'm just looking at the participants here, and I feel bad for several of them. I understand it gets them on the WrestleMania card. I understand that part. Damian Priest is literally Send Your Money in the Bank. At what point does he even consider the possibility of cashing in the damn thing? I know he's teased it a couple of times, but like, you're at WrestleMania. Couldn't you theoretically? Now, they may end up doing this, but it's going to be like random. It's going to feel random because there's no telegraphing leading up to this point. You could have them lose the tag team championships here and have them cash in on either Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre, which we'll get to here in a minute, or you could have them cash in You could have them cash in on friggin' Cody Rhodes if he ends up winning the championship, which again, I'll get to that match here in a minute. That's one of your main events. But the point is that even if he does, it's going to feel really random. It's going to feel kind of disjointed and out of whack with everything else that's gone on here because nothing up until this point has led you to the ability. In theory, Damian Priest should be becoming a world champion, in theory, unless it's a failed cash-in, in which case he's held the damn thing for so long to have a failed cash-in. It's stupid. So it's one of those things where, like, this match is like, who cares? For the sake of having a conversation here, I'm assuming they're going to drop the belts at this point. That'd be my guess. And if you're going to drop the belts, I'm just looking at the teams here. I'm going like, who the hell do you give it to? And by the way, I also feel bad for Austin Theory. Did you know he beat John Cena in a WrestleMania match? I think last year. And now he's in a comedy tag team with Grayson Waller. How the mighty have fallen. So I guess if you're going to drop the belts, why not give it to A-Town Down Under? Give him something. Give him a win at WrestleMania, maybe win some gold. Hey, so I'm predicting a change in the tag team championship. I would probably give it to Austin Theory and Grayson Waller for no other reason than to just throw the kid a bone. Give him something. All right, next up here, we've got a tag team match featuring Rey Mysterio and Dragon Lee versus Santos Escobar and Dominic Mysterio. So here, again, remember when I talked about a little bit earlier at the very beginning of this thing, when I gave the preamble, I said WWE is the storyline company. So is there a storyline leading into this tag team match? Sure. You've got the history with Dominic Mysterio and Rey Mysterio. Obviously, Dominic going in to take Judgment Day, betraying his father, all that stuff. You got Santos Escobar betraying Rey Mysterio. You've got that element of it. And then Dragon Lee kind of, joining up and helping Rey Mysterio in the situation. But here's the thing. I'm back to what I said a moment ago. I don't care. And the reason I don't care is because the Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio thing has already played out a little bit. If it was a one-on-one match or something, maybe with some stakes, it'd be fine. But let me ask you seriously. And this is a problem that's going to reoccur in a couple of these matches. Okay, so what do the winners and losers get? What happens? Win or lose? What occurs? Because at this point, Dominic Mysterio has done so much and gets so much attention and heat on his own, which is great. But he's literally just kind of shoehorned into a tag team match. The combination with Santos Escobar makes a lot of sense. By the way, I like what Santos Escobar is doing. I think he's doing tremendous work. Dominic Mysterio obviously has gotten into his own as a heel. They even did the thing where, at his wedding, Damian Priest led a chorus of boos at his own wedding. So, he's embraced this character. It's been really good. Rey Mysterio is a legend. He's great. Dragon Lee is excellent. So I'm back to this idea here. This match, I think, will be quite good. But I'm back to who cares. At the end of the day, regardless, pick one. Whichever side you think wins, does it change anything for them? I don't know I think the answer is no. I don't think it changes anything. So looking at it, I kind of went back and forth on it. I'm going to say I kind of want the Santos team to win. I want Santos and Dominic to win. Now, I could very easily see it being Rey Mysterio and Dragon Lee, but I want them to win because I want Santos to have a little bit more momentum going forward. I like this heel, faction he's got going. I like that. And I feel like it would advance that side of it for him to have this big moment at WrestleMania. So I feel like that would be the justifiable pick for me. So I'm going to go with the heels in this situation, but that's just the direction that I would take it. That's the story, gives you more story possibilities, I think, versus just having, the feel-good Dragon Lee, Rey Mysterio. Hey, we won at WrestleMania, but again, we won nothing. So there's really no stakes here other than supposed to be a grudge match, and we just kind of threw it together, basically at the last moment, even though it has some backstory. Don't get me wrong. It has backstory, but it still kind of got thrown together. Now, speaking of kind of thrown together, we got Jay and Jimmy Uso in the Battle of the Usos for the Uso Cup or the Uso Trophy or the, full custody of Solo Sikoa. I'm joking about this, but if you actually think about it, they're doing the brother versus brother thing at WrestleMania, which has historical precedent. But I guess, how do you want to compare it to Bret Hart versus Owen Hart in WrestleMania 10? Is the match going to be as good as that? No. Is the build-up to it as good as that? No. Is there some backstory and build up with the whole bloodline thing and everything? Absolutely. Months and months of backstory. But at the same time, it's still brother versus brother kind of shoehorned together. And again, what is the stakes? Does the winner leave? If the one brother wins, does he leave the bloodline? If the other brother wins, does he join the bloodline again? Do they get custody of Solo Sikoa? There is no outcome here. Regardless of which brother, pick one. Uso 1 or Uso 2. Does it really make a difference who wins? No. It doesn't change anything. None of the stakes have altered anything, regardless of which one of them wins. It's a brother versus brother grudge match at WrestleMania because, it's better than a lot of the other options we had, and it gets them both on the card. So they have a one-on-one feature match. I congratulate both the brothers for getting this opportunity to have a one-on-one match at WrestleMania, especially at an anniversary WrestleMania. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at it and going does it even matter which one of you wins? Again, same problem as a lot of these other ones. You're going to feel a reoccurring theme with a lot of these matches. On paper, it looks good, but you could have done this on a random SmackDown. You wouldn't notice the damn difference. It doesn't feel like a WrestleMania match to me. It just feels like, they're here, so put them in a match. Now, that said, prediction-wise, I'm looking at it, and honestly, I always forget. I always get the two brothers mixed up. I'm going to go with Jey Uso. Why not? We'll be like a negative sweep of the bloodline. The bloodline will struggle mightily, and this will be their first loss to kind of lead into other things as we go through the rest of the card. We'll go with Jey Uso going over Jimmy Uso, and I think the match will be solid. It's just nothing. Let's put it this way. My prediction is I don't think we'll remember it 2 months from now, but it was a match on the card, and I don't think it has any storyline implications either. So that's kind of where that one stands. The next one here could be something or could be nothing. I really don't know where we're going to fall on this one because there is potential, but on paper, it's absolute filler. Right now, just as it stands today, if nothing else comes out of it, it is 100% absolute filler, and it literally exists for no other reason. So I'm looking at a 6-woman tag team match here. We got Jade Cargill making her full kind of wrestling debut for WWE, even though she's been signed since September and hasn't had a match on NXT, or she made a Royal Rumble appearance, and now she's shoehorned into a WrestleMania match. So this is your token Jade Cargill. And you got Naomi in there because congratulations, you're the third wheel. You get to hang out. And this is basically the match where, hey, Bianca Belair's not on the card. We should probably put her on the card. What do you think? Oh, yeah. And throw in some Jade Cargill. And Naomi can come too. Why not? So that it's the three of them versus Damage Control. You got Dakota Kai, Kairi Sane, and Asuka, the women's tag team champions who don't ever seem to have to defend their titles, barely ever. So nonetheless, they are here. They even got belts on the graphic, but they don't defend that title. You could probably, if you wanted to try what I think you're going to do, and this is me guessing, this is my prediction. If you're going to do what I think you're going to do, you could have just as easily done this with a tag team match. You could have done the Kabuki Warriors versus Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair trying to win the championship, and then something happens. So let me give it to you really this way. Right now, as it stands, it just feels like filler. It feels like, hey, we need to put Bianca Belair on the card, so we did. We need to put Jade Cargill on this card somehow to justify our investment, so we did. And here we are. And yeah, what the hell? We signed Naomi, so here you go. You get to be in this match. But I feel like the answer to this is going to be a storyline answer. And if it is, then I feel like Damage Control wins this. And the reason being that it gives a justification for Bianca Belair to continue a storyline where she has shown frustration in recent months and anger about things related to losing certain key matches. And if she loses this match and is part of the losing side of this match, she could take it out on one or both of Naomi and Jade Cargill, which could lead you to the Jade Cargill Bianca Belair collision that people seem to want based on the reaction that they got at the Royal Rumble. So if you want to go down that route, and by the way, I would be in favor of this because Bianca Belair as a face is absolutely generic and boring. Bianca Belair as a heel could be interesting. So if you want to go that route and you want to do the Jade Cargill thing, that would be a really simple way to do it. And by the way, you could have some matches with Naomi in the mix as well. And just that could be your out. And it gives Damage Control something, even though, they're kind of just floating around show by show. But this would give them something. And at the same time, further storyline. So this would serve two masters if you wanted to go that route. Otherwise, it's just filler. It's a 6-woman tag just for the hell of it, just to get them on the card. So my prediction, and more of a hopeful prediction than anything else, is Damage Control wins, which then leads to some dissension on the other side and potentially some matches down the road, which would be interesting. I would like to see it. And hopefully that is what happens coming to this one. All right, second to last match here on the left side, which looks like it's your, just before the main event. Again, if this follows the order. If not, then I apologize. So we've got Gunther taking on Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental Championship. So this is almost the same issue as the Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch thing, in that the match should be excellent. I have the highest expectation that this match will be top tier between these two, especially to WrestleMania with the big stage and everything. But I'm going to ask the similar kind of question that I asked the first time. Do you think that Sami Zayn is the one that knocks off the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion in a match at WrestleMania where basically the buildup was he won to get into a spot in there? That's my question. The answer is no. The answer is Gunther wins, continues his title reign. And if you're going to have him lose the championship, you do it with somebody that you built up towards getting him to that point. Be it Chad Gable, be it somebody else. The point is you build it up so that one of two things happens. He either holds the championship until he gets a shot at a heavyweight championship, or he loses to somebody that you've built up in such a way with a progressive storyline that leads to the top of the mountain being Gunther and finally dethroning him. You do not do it in a thrown together, hey, you won a match to qualify to face Gunther. Here you go. Oh, and you win the championship too. No, Sami Zayn, in the same vein as kind of the Becky Lynch situation from earlier, Sami Zayn winning the Intercontinental Championship does what? And believe it or not, even though it sounds like I've been very negative on everything, and unfortunately, I've got a lot of critical things to say about a lot of this card. But let me be honest with you. Sami Zayn winning that Intercontinental Championship immediately diminishes it. Immediately, it drops in prestige because Gunther has done such a tremendous job with it. Sami Zayn cannot keep that up. He would lose a lot of the credibility that the championship had immediately because, and it's no slight on Sami Zayn. The problem is there's no obvious place for him to go if he wins. You could try to do a thing with Chad Gable. Maybe he's upset that he didn't get to be the one that beats Gunther, so you could try to shoehorn that. But then Gunther moves on to greater pastures. He could, then pursue a heavyweight championship. So he could move on. He'd be fine. He's done so well with it up until this point that this would be like a small speed bump for him. But for Sami Zayn, it's like, okay, well, here you go. Here's a championship. Great. It's not that I can't see it. I could see that would be throwing us a curveball, but I think it would be a terrible idea. That's kind of the reason why I'm thinking about it the way that I am. I'm thinking Gunther wins. They have themselves a nice little match, and then the world moves on. And that leads us to the main event of night one. So regardless, we know this is going to be the main event of night one. It is the tag team match to end all tag team matches. It is Seth Rollins and the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes taking on Roman Reigns and The Rock. the final boss. Okay, look, up until this point, I have been very snarky about the entire left side. And on the right side, by the way, it's not going to get less snarky. But let me be clear about this. This tag team match is one of the stupidest waste of time in the history of WrestleMania. How dare I say such a ridiculous thing? How dare I say such a ridiculous thing where there's been gimmick battle royals and all kinds? Because this match is pointless. It doesn't matter who wins. Again, how could I say such a ridiculous thing? Because regardless of who wins, if we go with expectation, here's a spoiler. My expectation in the main event of night 2 is that Cody Rhodes finally wins the damn thing. And I'll talk more about why in a minute. But the point is, if I go off the idea that he's finally going to win the damn thing after otherwise you've wasted 2 Royal Rumble wins, if you expect him to win the damn championship, then here's a question for you. Which do you think makes more sense to you from a narrative standpoint? Are we going to make it easier for him, or are we going to make it harder for him? Are we going to do like, oh, well, actually, you don't even have to worry about the bloodline in the final championship match. Don't even worry about it. Don't even concern yourself with such things. Or are we going to do the WrestleMania 30 thing where we make it as physically difficult as possible for the babyface to win the damn thing, where they overcome all the odds, and then we're supposed to be like, yay. Which one do you think makes more sense to you? If you believe that Cody Rhodes is going to win in the main event of night 2, and we're going to make it as difficult as possible. Now, there are a couple of things that you could do that could make it a little bit more interesting. You could have Seth Rollins actually turn on Cody Rhodes or turn his back on Cody Rhodes, or you could have some shenanigans or something happens and Seth Rollins is not available to help him or whatever, or, somebody hits him with a rubber chicken. The point is they slip on the banana peel, they lose, and then that sets up your night 2 to make it more difficult. Or you could have Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes win, in which case it's actually easier for Cody Rhodes, and his big moment is actually cheapened a little bit because we made it easier. Which one do you think makes more sense? I'm going to leave that to you. I'm going to predict that the Bloodline are able to successfully coexist for one night here to make this work. By the way, I'm also not excited about this match from an in-ring standpoint. I think Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins are going to do their best to make this really good. Roman Reigns is still very good. The Rock is 51 years old. And the last time The Rock was in the ring consistently and actually won a championship, he got hurt. And this was, I want to say 10 years ago. I don't remember exactly how long ago it was, but it was a while. It was that thing where he beat CM Punk at WrestleMania and he had that last little run before they changed the design of the championship and did a whole thing. But the point is that he was already oversized at that point. Like, he was less athletic and more built for movies. He's even more so now. He's like 10 years older and he's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and more larger than life. He looks great standing in the ring. He can obviously still talk. He can do his bit with the microphone like anybody else can. Like, he's more than capable of doing that. But in ring, there's a reason we haven't really seen too much physicality of him in the ring in and of itself, because they're like, you want to keep him away from it as long as you can and get away with it. And my expectation is they're going to work around those limitations in this match. I'm sure the match will be very carefully thought through. So I think the match will be clean. But at the same time, it's like, this is stupid. Why didn't you just do the authority thing and just force them to fight the Bloodline anyway? Like, having a match is pointless unless you're going to do some shenanigans. But either way, this still feels like a complete waste of time. And in reality, cheapens the World Heavyweight Championship that Seth Rollins holds. And I'll get to that when we get to their match. So I'll get to that now as I'm about to shift over to night 2. But the point is, like, Seth Rollins cares so little about this championship, which apparently no one actually gives a crap about, except for Drew McIntyre, which we'll talk about here in a second. Apparently no one else gives a crap about this championship because it's a whatever. You can be in a tag team match in night 1 and then defend the title in night 2. And what happens if you win or lose or whatever? Who cares about that title? Because the important thing is defeating the Bloodline. Even though this one match does not defeat the Bloodline, the only way to do it fully and properly is to defeat Roman Reigns and take his title, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. You could have already done without any of this nonsense because, the storyline people didn't actually build a very logical storyline, and that's going to be shown in night 2. Now that takes us to night 2. I've shifted over to the other side of the screen. We're all the way on the other side. Seth frickin' Rollins versus Drew McIntyre. Okay, look, I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I expect Drew McIntyre to win this championship and actually win the damn title. And by the way, Drew McIntyre is the real MVP because he's carrying 2 storylines simultaneously. He's trying his best to make this interesting, even though I genuinely don't give a crap about it, even though they don't give a crap about it, even though they've already said this is the Constellation Championship that no one gives a crap about. So poor Drew McIntyre is going to have to win this championship and try to restore some prestige to it because Seth Rollins has basically made it into a joke by their own storyline. Apparently, no one cares about it because Cody Rhodes could have challenged for it, and Seth Rollins tried to convince him to challenge for it, and he's like, "No, I'm gonna go get the real championship, like the real championship, not the trinket, not the one that you bought at Shop Zone, not that one. I'm gonna go get the real one. I'd rather do that." Even though I'm gonna have to fight through all this other stuff, I'd rather do that one because that's the real one, not the toy you're playing around with. And Drew McIntyre's sitting there like, and that's the one I have to compete with. That's the one I actually have to go get because anyway. So now these guys are doing their thing, and in reality, Drew McIntyre's doing a better job selling a CM Punk match, which isn't even on the card. Can you have CM Punk interfere or do something? Yeah, sure, of course you can. But the point is, like, actually, let me put it this way: my prediction is Drew McIntyre wins. I'm hoping Drew McIntyre wins. Although, remember what I said earlier about Senior Money in the Bank? It would be really funny if Drew McIntyre actually did win and then he got cashed in and then lost the championship to Damian Priest. Now, it would continue to devalue a championship that is already being smacked in the face a lot. It would be nice to actually have Drew McIntyre hold it as like a proper villain and actually hold the championship and defend it and do some nice stuff with it. But like, we'll get to the other championship match here in a minute. But I feel sorry for these guys for having to work around this problem because in reality, between the tag team match in night one and the fact that they're not going to be the main championship match and they're shoehorned into night two with the real championship match, it continuously diminishes this title, which is going to sit on Raw and just feel like a secondary thing because that's what it is. It's a secondary title. But like we said, guys, storyline. Yeah, storyline. Woo. Now, speaking of storyline, that takes us to the next match here. It is the Pride, Almighty Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits, taking on, I already forgot their name. It is Karrion Kross's group with Scarlett and the Authors of Pain and Paul Ellering and whatever they call themselves. Here's the thing. The match will be fine for what it is. Does anyone care? And I'm not saying this to be mean. Like, does anyone care? They've been feuding for a while. Does anyone care about this match? This is the definition of filler. And I feel bad for every single one of these guys. Bobby Lashley is a former world champion. Karrion Kross at one point maybe should have been. He was an NXT champion and actually looked the part as an NXT champion. And then he had to come in with a stupid costume and it never recovered. They took away almost everything that made him interesting when they brought him to the main roster, and they've repackaged him a couple times and they've got vignettes and like spooky stuff. And he had an hourglass and everything, and Scarlett and hourglass, and they did all kinds of spooky stuff. And now they're stuck here in this stupid feud for no reason. And basically their entire bit is they basically annoy people and like, I guess, take their souls or something. But at the same time, they don't matter. And here they are, WrestleMania, 6-man tag. Does it really matter who wins? No. The losers are all of us. Everybody who has to see this match is a loser. Everyone who's in the match is a loser for being in the match as opposed to something more interesting. And here we are. The winners, whatever the Karrion Kross group is called, them, they win. Does it matter? No. Does it change anything for them? Not at all. But give them something. There you go, guys. You win a match. Congratulations. Now, speaking of no winners, we got LA Knight and AJ Styles. Okay. See, I told you guys I was only gonna get snarkier. Day 2 is even worse than day 1. Now, I'm having more fun snarking on this than I would have watching it. Okay, so with LA Knight and AJ Styles, here's what I got. The match is going to be good. I trust both of these guys to have a very good match. But the way we got to this match, guys, it was stupid. And now here is why I'm going to bring up the whole bloodline thing. I actually want to make a point here about the bloodline. So remember, Cody Rhodes, the whole reason that Seth Rollins is sacrificing his world championship thing and potentially hurting himself in a match and then having to do another match where he defends the title and the whole bit is because, quote unquote, they want to defeat the bloodline once and for all, blah, 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 yada, yada. So Cody Rhodes will save us, and die for our sins or something. Whatever. The point is, they're doing that. But here's the thing. The bloodline has been beating up people for basically 2 years. They've been doing all this stuff. They've been dominating, but like in recent months, they've become staler and staler, and they've struggled, and they had the Usos, split up, and they're not as strong as they once were. But I want to remind you here, the whole idea is that this group is so tough and everything, and Roman Reigns isn't around half the time. And why couldn't you just have defeated the bloodline on your own? And what I mean by that is the following. The bloodline have made a lot of enemies in narrative in WWE storytelling. So that includes these two guys that are in a match against each other. And I'm going to remind you why they're in a match against each other. They're in a match against each other because in storyline, AJ Styles was taken out by the bloodline. Therefore, when he came back, he was mad at the bloodline. So he was helping out to try to beat the bloodline. But then he was also mad at LA Knight, who took his spot when he got beat up by the bloodline. So therefore, logically, he's more mad at LA Knight than he is at the bloodline who actually took him out. Now, you may be saying to yourself, Carlos, that is the exact opposite of logic. And I would say, yes. But in WWE parlance, It works for reasons. Not good reasons, but that's why they're having this match, because they need to be on WrestleMania card, and there is no other reason to put them in the WrestleMania card because they're both idiots. Because baby faces in WWE are morons. Because if these two joined up with a couple of guys in the next match, Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, who also have beef with the Bloodline, and in day one, if you go back at day one, you also have the one Uso. I think Jay, you're the one Uso who left the Bloodline. So real quick, I want to do a quick count here. Do a roll call, if you will. So LA Knight, 1. AJ Styles, 2. Randy Orton, 3. Kevin Owens, 4. Sami Zayn, 5. Jey Uso, 6. Cody Rhodes, who wants the Bloodline out, 7. Seth Rollins, 8. For those keeping score at home, that is 8 distinct people, including former world champions, tag team champions, all these guys that have all these credentials, right? You've got 8 people against a Bloodline that consists of Jimmy Uso, Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa, and Paul Heyman. You're telling me the 8 guys couldn't have got Cody Rhodes couldn't have gotten them all on the bus or gotten them all together for dinner and been like, hey guys, we should get rid of the Bloodline. Hey, that's a good idea. How do we do that? Well, there's 8 of us and 4 of them. And Paul Heyman barely counts. So it's like 3.5. That's a good point. There are more of us than there are of them. Yes. So if we all got together, we could literally beat the living crap out of them and then they would all like be dead. We could literally murder them. We could all have steel chairs and kill them. Well, that would make a lot of sense, Cody, but we don't do that kind of thing. We should all have individual matches instead and absolutely not pay attention to anything resembling cohesion. Yes, that would make a lot more sense. That would be the logical play, is for us to completely divide and not conquer until Cody Rhodes saves us all by himself. That's brilliant. Good talk. Thanks. Okay, great. WWE are the storyline guys, and all their baby faces are idiots who apparently can't figure out how to do math. 8 versus 3.5, and they can't defeat the Bloodline. The Bloodline could have been defeated 6 months ago. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, whatever. You could have they could have ended them at any time. All they had to do was figure out how to do math. But that's the big threat that they have to defeat, that this entire WrestleMania is built around this. And you couldn't figure out how to do math. Y'all could have just shown up and done it. Anytime. On a SmackDown, on a Raw, anytime they showed up. Well, I forgot. I'm sorry. I forgot The Rock is part of it now as well with the Bloodline. So fine. 4.5 against 8. And The Rock is 51 years old. Like, come on. But never mind. Okay, LA Knight, AJ Styles. LA Knight should win this. Because LA Knight needs it more. Like, at this point, he's lost so much momentum compared to where he was some months back. The man needs some momentum. And AJ Styles can afford a loss. He really loses nothing. He can just go back to being brooding. Whatever he's doing right now, he's brooding. That's kind of his deal now. He doesn't live like the OC anymore. He's just brooding. He's very angry at people for things. And that's his gimmick in 2024. He's AJ Styles. He's brooding and he's angry. Good to know. Next up, we got a triple threat match for the United States Championship. Logan Paul defending his title against both Randy Orton and Kevin Owens, which on paper means that Logan Paul should lose this, but given the way that they've booked this entire thing, probably he won't. What I'm struggling with is, like, what do you sell? Like, okay, if you're going to have him lose the title, I would think he loses the title to Kevin Owens. That would probably make the most sense. To me, if I had been booking this, the way I would have done it is, instead of the AJ Styles LA Knight waste of my time, I would have had LA Knight. By now, LA Knight should have already won the damn United States Championship, because it clearly wasn't having plans for him for the world title picture. They shoehorned him into a match with Roman Reigns that led to a lot of the silliness that he wasn't going to win, which hurt his momentum, even though he was doing so well. By the way, I don't know if you noticed, LA Knight has done way less promos, which was the thing that was getting him over. So they've added more cold water on top of it, slowed him completely down, bogged him down in this feud that for the most part was junk. AJ Styles basically wasn't there for the majority of it. And then they did a couple of segments at the end to try to make it interesting, I guess. So they did this. Imagine if LA Knight had been the United States Championship with some feuds leading into this, and then he could have had this slot with the United States Championship, but against some other opponent one-on-one. That would have been really good for him, because he could have continued. Or if you didn't want to go that route, you could have had him build towards this match, a one-on-one match with Logan Paul in this slot where he wins the United States Championship and then rides that into SummerSlam. And now he's got a title win. Not a world title, but he's got a title win. And there you go. He's finally won a damn championship after all this buildup and momentum that he's had on the main roster, where he just hasn't had the chance to win anything. But instead, he's stuck in this stupid match. And then we got a triple threat match here that who gives a shit? I'm trying, guys. Like, I know I've been complaining about every single match, but a lot of this stuff is really dumb. The match will be fine. Logan Paul is actually quite good considering a guy who has barely been doing it that long. Randy Orton's Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens is a pro's pro. They're going to have a good match. But does it matter who wins? But given the three components, does Randy Orton need a United States title reign? Kevin Owens, I guess he could win it. I think he's done it. He's had the United States title a couple of times before, I think. So yeah, sure, if you want to do that. Or you could just have Logan Paul retain and then find somebody else and have him lose it one-on-one. I don't know. That's just kind of what I'm looking at here. My first guess would be Kevin Owens if you're going to take the title off him. Otherwise, I think he retains. I don't think Randy Orton wins. I don't see that scenario, but I guess you could do anything if you really want to. All right, and that leads us down to the very end here. We're down to 2 matches. And again, if this follows this sequencing, then Bayley and Io Sky just got completely screwed because they're going to be right before the big match and they're going to basically not have any momentum whatsoever because you just had all this other stuff going on. And this is like a death spot right before the main event. So I feel bad for them if this is actually where they get stuck on the card. Bayley should win. This should be the culmination of this storyline with Damage Control. My concern has been that after the Royal Rumble win, and her initial thing where she was able to figure out the double cross, which is actually very good. The only baby face that apparently is smart around here because they're all idiots. Otherwise, it just hasn't led to anything. Like she hasn't taken out any members of Damage Control. Like nothing has happened really other than her being taunted. And, basically she lost any advantage she had by being able to outthink them the first time. So I expect her to win, but she's lost a little bit of that momentum that she had coming out of it. I think she needs it. I think at this point, given where we're at here, I think Bayley should win because I think she needs this going forward. And you could do some interesting things. By the way, remember what I said about heel Bianca Belair? Bianca Belair didn't trust Bayley during this entire buildup, and Naomi was trying to help her, and you had that whole thing happening, right? She could be feuding with a couple of folks, but it could also lead to a heel Bianca Belair trying to take the title from Bayley. So like it offers you a couple of possibilities. So I think regardless though, in order for this to continue, in order for this to happen, or even offer the possibility, I would actually rather do Bianca and Rhea Ripley if it was up to me, if I was going to book it. But you could do Bianca Belair and Bayley if you want. I think that could be interesting with a heel Bianca. I think Bayley has to win this one. And I think that leads us into our main event here. I already said earlier, I think Cody Rhodes win the damn thing, commencing the most bland vanilla world title reign of our time. Now, why am I so down on this? Well, there's a couple reasons. I'm going to give you the shortest possible version of it. I actually haven't been the biggest fan of Cody Rhodes' work as far as kind of a character. And this goes back to AEW. I actually did enjoy most of his work in AEW. I enjoyed a couple of the things, like the MJF feud with him was actually pretty good with the whole lashings. He was doing lashings before lashings was cool. The bit he did with Dustin Rhodes, I thought was very good. I thought that was excellent. In ring, Cody Rhodes has always been very good. Very, very, very solid. And he understands what he's trying to do out there. But as a promo, I cannot stand his cadence. Whatever it is, like there's something about when he starts talking that immediately I want to change the channel. So the entire latter portion of his run there, most of his run, honestly, in AEW, I was very happy having him in the mid card and lower mid card. He had his own little Codyverse, little pocket corner of the show. I hated that corner of the show. I wanted it gone from the show, stricken from the record. I wanted to shove him into a corner and never see him again. And so then when he went to WWE, I was like, well, great. At least he gets off the show. Then I can enjoy the rest of the show more. And then he went to WWE and literally is the same character, the same gimmick, the same getup, the same song. And when he made his debut at WrestleMania, re-debut as Cody Rhodes with the American Nightmare, he literally had the Cody elevator. He had the same theme song. He had the same gear. He still got the same neck tattoo. Like there is no difference between the Cody Rhodes that I'm looking at here and the guy who was a mid-carder in AEW. And I'm sitting there going like, and folks will be like, well, AEW didn't use him properly. It's like, he's not interesting as a character. This entire idea that he's finishing his story, I'm like, but what if the story sucks? What if the story is really boring? And fine, you finished the story. Congratulations. You overcame all the odds and the rubber chicken. You did it. If you don't know that reference, go back to WrestleMania 39. You'll get the rubber chicken thing. But the point is that, okay, you've overcome all these odds. And then you're just a bland world champion. And now we have to find somebody hopefully interesting to face you to make this interesting. Because remember, based on this entire conversation, if we did this the way that you expected to, you overcame the biggest mountains, then honestly, who can present much of a threat to you other than maybe a guy like Gunther? That's basically what I'm looking for. You'd be looking for somebody like a Gunther to offer that. But here's the thing. This is me. In that scenario, I want Gunther to win. Like I'd be much more interested in a world title if somebody was going to dethrone Roman Reigns. Now, I could make an argument that honestly, I would prefer Roman Reigns retained for all the reasons that I just outlined. I expect Cody to win because it was a fait accompli. Like, I think he has it all but written in his contract that he has to win the damn championship. So I assume this is going to be when they finally get it done, because after that, I don't know how you come back from this. Two Royal Rumble wins in a row. You have to win this time, I think. Question mark. Especially after all this. But if it had been up to me, the guy I would have been priming to take Roman Reigns down would have been a guy like Gunther, somebody who has that kind of credibility and already a long-standing, Intercontinental Championship reign. And like, he looks the part, he sounds the part. He would be able to physically throw Roman Reigns around and make it look like somebody who could take the guy down. Cody Rhodes is more than capable in ring, but it's one of those things where, okay, if you have to overcome all these odds and you finally win, fine. Then honestly, you should basically be unbeatable. Nobody should really be able to take you down at that point, because who can match up to somebody who overcame all those odds, right? It actually takes the drama out of it for me. But that's just me. So my prediction is Cody Rhodes finally wins. The destiny is fulfilled. You do a whole dramatic thing. He cries and his family's there, and I proceed to yawn somewhere. And basically that's the conclusion of WrestleMania 40, WrestleMania XL. So that concludes my thoughts on WrestleMania 40. I'm going to have to edit this down quite a bit to make it more manageable. It's still going to be a long video either way, because I had a lot of stuff that I wanted to say about a lot of these matches. But I hope that the takeaway here was what I said at the beginning. The WWE is going to put on a good show. They know how to have as much sizzle as they want on these programs, even if the steak is lackluster or mediocre. And that's kind of my problem with a lot of this. They're going to have all the sizzle in the world, but just going match by match, looking at it in this format, just literally looking at it, I'm like, this is actually really tragic. The potential and the amount of talent on this screen tells me that it should be way better than it is. And like I said, the matches will be fine, but most of them are inconsequential, or they're so obvious what the result should be, quote unquote, that there's no drama in it. So I'm kind of like, okay, well, other than because it has to exist, I'm trying to justify why we needed 2 days. I honestly think you could have cut a bunch of this stuff off and put together one really strong card, put the best combination of people together, and it probably would have been a really good WrestleMania. But instead, you've got a watered down 2-day version of this, where individual matches, I think there'll be some moments there. I have no doubt about that. But as a whole, it just feels like it's been drowned in just too much. And that's kind of my feeling, just looking at it, my takeaway. So, I'll watch it kind of in a replay format, because I just can't watch this live. It's going to be too damn long, given my interest level in a lot of these matches. But we'll see. And maybe they'll surprise me on a couple. I'd be curious to get what your thoughts are and predictions are. Hopefully you weren't too turned off by all the snark and negativity in this case. But I have to be honest. I wasn't feeling this card going into it. Nothing that has happened, by the way, has really entered any interest in me. And actually, that reminds me, one more thing I want to mention. I forgot to mention in the first half. I'll mention it really quickly at the end. The Rock has done tremendous work to make this as interesting as possible. When they did the whole pivot and they were moving away from what looked like it was going to be the original plan, and they made it basically this WrestleMania 30 Redux. My problem is that in the same vein of what I just said, this is like a worse version of WrestleMania 30, like a lazier version of WrestleMania 30. And The Rock, being the heel Rock, he's been tremendous. He's been very good. But I also remember Hollywood Rock from, I think, 2003, and that was 21 years ago. And at that point, he was still kind of in his prime. He was in his 30s. He was in his early 30s, and he was in his physical prime, and he could carry the segments on the microphone and in the ring. He could do what he needed to do. This version of The Rock is 51 years old. He's done a lot of other stuff. He's just not built for day-to-day wrestling anymore. And a lot of the stuff he's doing is derivative of what he already did. So it's like I'm looking at a worse version of Hollywood Rock trying to make this work. And the people around him just don't match up. Because go back, if you don't believe me, go back and look at that Hollywood Rock run. Because he was able to have amazing program. He was able to have fun program with Booker T. He was able to have a mini feud with the Hurricane of all things. That's how good he was. Hulk Hogan, Goldberg, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, there was so much stuff going on during that last run, that heel Rock run, that was so good. And then go take a look at this. And you tell me if, as somebody who saw that the first time, if this is supposed to, quench my thirst or take care of it. Like, I'm left wanting. It's going to be fine. The individual matches themselves, I think, will be solid. I don't think there's a bad match on here as far as I can tell. Most of these matches look like they should be good. I just don't see anything necessarily transcending the source material, because how we got here doesn't make sense necessarily. Even though these are the storyline people. These storylines were kind of weak leading into this, and they're just going to have to make it work in ring somehow. and hopefully it comes together. But we'll have to see. Anyway, that's it for me. I'm going to focus mainly on the cards, I think, because obviously I'm a little bit down on the wrestling product itself, apparently, so it would seem. But I'm still enjoying the cards. And one more thing I'll mention, and I thought I was going to mention off the top and it completely slipped my mind. So if you made it to the end of the video, thank you. But I'm going to mention that on the next video, I'm actually going to go back to talking about cards. So obviously I'm going to be a lot more positive. The AEW metal has actually hit EPAC. And as expected, and I'll talk about it more in that video, as expected, there has been quite a number of very nice cards that have been pulled out of the first day of EPAC, including the gold PMG 1-of-1s. And spoiler, I actually opened a handful of packs of that product and I pulled a gold PMG 1-of-1. I will show that card and tell the story about it in the next video, which I'll record in a bit, and then probably will drop a day or two after this one. So this is the prediction video. These are my predictions. I probably got half of them wrong. We'll have to see what WWE decides to do. Maybe they'll surprise me, but otherwise it should be interesting. So I'm going to cross my fingers and hope for Bianca Belair heel turn and a Damian Priest cash in that takes, by the way, the greatest thing it would be if Cody Rhodes wins and Damian Priest cashes in on Cody Rhodes. The amount of anger, that would be funny. That would be an amazing WrestleMania moment to finish. After all that nonsense, Damian Priest is your world champion walking out of the Undisputed Universal Championship because he took it from Cody Rhodes. That would be funny. I would enjoy that. I'm not holding my breath, but it would be very funny. I'm not holding my breath, though. I'll cross my fingers for some kind of a cash in, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's it for me. More videos coming up on the channel. Hopefully you enjoyed. Appreciate the engagement. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much, and we'll catch you in the next one.